There's no doubt there's a hometown bias. I mean, Australian investors want to feel close to what they're investing in, and South African investors the same, and I can assure you North American investors don't sell themselves short either. So the issue is you've got to try and put that in perspective and try and overcome your biases and recognise that every country's got some great operators and some great real estate. Why not try and pick the best operators in those markets and create a diversified product or a diversified strategy of the world's best? And that's what we set out to do 10 years ago. And look, I'm not going to say too modestly, the reality is it's worked. It sounds simple, and yet it's worked. We just try and buy the best, and we're not smart enough to work out if this economy is going to be hot in the next 12 months and that economy thereafter. So we just have a nice diversified portfolio, and that's where diversified should be, real diversification of high quality. Diversification within a market, I'm not quite sure you're really getting diversification by buying 6 South African REITs, which all do pretty much the same bar 1 or 2. Is it real diversification? Whereas if you go globally, you can find there's an opportunity set of 300 companies. You only have to pick 40, and you're getting the world's best, and they're going to produce great, particularly risk-adjusted returns. So that's, to us, the benefit of going global. In terms of cities outside of South Africa, look, it's not a market I'm familiar enough with. And again, there's an opportunity there. But at the end of the day, the one lesson that we've learnt over time is that you want to invest in countries or cities where there's a very good, transparent zoning, government planning regime. Because one thing you don't want is basically lots of competition appearing everywhere because there's no planning controls. So I think that's the problem. Everybody was enthusiastic about China 10 years ago. Right? The problem is the Chinese are building everywhere. So the rent growth hasn't been that exceptional in a lot of places. Whereas in some of the cities that are considered old and staid and boring, they've actually produced more growth because you're not seeing the supply, but you're seeing some of the industries. Like San Francisco, 10 years ago, San Francisco was a basket case after the bubble burst in the IT sector. So it's a North American city. The North American economy hasn't been doing that well, but San Francisco is driven by an industry that's not taking any notice of what's going on in the rest of North America. So we think it's important to invest in great cities with planning constraints. Interestingly, let me go on, San Francisco has a planning constraint that they can only produce so much office space per annum because they don't want to be oversupplied. Well, of course, if you've got all these IT companies trying to get into San Francisco and the developers are restricted on how much they can build, what's happening? Rents are going up very strongly. So that's what we look